Welcome to the meeting of the Backbench Business Committee, where the committee will be considering 11 new applications for debates and a series of other debates that are still to be scheduled. The first application is from Benavis Jekti with an application for a debate on knife crime amongst children and young people. Ben, over to you.
I wanted to come here to present my case for why we need to have a debate on this. I don't believe we've had a debate in Parliament, certainly not in this Parliament, on this topic yet. I know we've talked about it in the past, but obviously with so many new members and with the issue of knife crime becoming so much more prevalent and so much worse, I think it's vital that we as parliamentarians have a discussion about this. I think the reason why I feel particularly passionate about this, I don't think this is necessarily a party political issue, but I think it's a discussion that we need to have as a parliament, 650 of us, to be able to have a very honest, a very frank, a very robust discussion about knife crime, particularly amongst children and young people, and why so many of our children find it so easy to not only carry a knife but also to use a knife. We saw the tragic instance this week of Harvey Wilgoose. Previously, we've seen Kelly and Bokassa, who was 14 years old, and before that, Leo Ross, who was 12 years old, and that's just in the last 3 weeks. And then there's all the other incidents that don't make the paper where children are wounded by other children. I think we need to really think about how we address this. We talk about banning knives. Zombie knives only account for around 3.6% of fatal incidents. Kitchen knives account for over 50%, and all of us have a drawer full of kitchen knives at home. So access to those knives is obviously ready and accessible. I do think we need to, as a parliament, come together and really to understand what's driving this, what has changed, because I wager that all of us, when we were younger, didn't fear being stabbed, even if we grew up in sort of less salubrious parts. But this was never a problem where I lived growing up, and it certainly wasn't something that I was aware of. And now it seems to be so prevalent that even in my own constituency, which is effectively rural Cambridgeshire, we're seeing instances of children at secondary schools carrying knives, and ultimately, and thankfully on behalf of my constituents, are not being prepared to use them yet. But it is only a matter of time before this issue spills out and affects everybody. So that's the reason why I would like to have this debate. I think it's a hugely important debate, and I would like to see as much participation as possible, because I think this is something that we can really start to get to grips with if we're to tackle this.
Obviously, the application is for a chamber debate. It's well subscribed, so you have more than enough speakers on both sides of the chamber. There is a substantial queue for chamber debates. If we offered you a Westminster Hall debate as a starter, as it were, would you accept that? Before you answer, there would be nothing to prevent you coming back for an application for the chamber, but I think we'd expect to see a motion attached to it rather than general debate.
How long would the wait be for a chamber debate?
At the moment, we've got a queue of debates that will take us up to the Easter recess. So it'll be May or beyond.
Okay. And if it was to be a Westminster Hall debate?
You'd get a debate, I think, in early March.
Early March. I didn't come prepared for...
You don't have to make a decision now, by the way. It's not.
I didn't come prepared am I able to think about it, or is it something I have to... Okay. I would like to think about it, just to ascertain what the likely... I think it's something that I would like to bring to the main chamber, simply because...
there have been, on business questions, there have been many requests for a debate on knife crime.
Yeah, and I think if we have a Westminster Hall debate...
The same reasons you've outlined.
Yeah, I do think that if we have it in Westminster Hall, it will be difficult to get everybody to have the ability to speak on it. I think I would like to bring it to the main chamber. I'm conscious that there's a delay on that.
Just to chime in on that one, I think I understand why you want it in the chamber, and I think obviously it's grand to be in there, and this is such an important issue. And there's some, like, I've had constituents in my area which have been affected by event. Owen Dunn, who got stabbed, it was terrible. In Westminster Hall, we could guarantee you a longer period, which is more likely to get everyone a chance to speak. And I do appreciate it's not as grand as the chamber, but in the chamber we've seen debates cut short or cancelled because we've had business of the House which has pushed it around. So at least with Westminster Hall, you would be able to guarantee all these people on the list you would have a 3-hour slot where you could speak, and I think that's quite powerful.
You can guarantee it. Sorry, I thought it was limited, potentially capped to an hour and a half.
Just to explain, we are, on Tuesday mornings we allocate a 90-minute debate. On Thursday afternoons we allocate two 90-minute debates. But if we have a very well subscribed application, we can allocate the full 180 minutes in Westminster Hall on Thursday, which is guaranteed time, as Will says. The problem in the chamber is that if we get UQs or statements on a Thursday, it concertines the time. So we had very well subscribed debates last week. The most subscribed one went for 2 hours 25 minutes, and the other about an hour and a half. So you never get 3 hours in the chamber, to be fair.
Okay.
But you don't have to make a decision.
I think I'll continue.
I'll
I'll
be in
take
touch with you in due course. Any other questions from colleagues? No?
Well,
Yes, Martin.
Ben, don't you think, because it's so, sadly, so topical at the moment, an earlier debate in Westminster Hall would at least flag up genuine concerns and perhaps an approach from the government may be considering, which you could then follow up with getting the queue, as it were, for a major debate in the chamber, as Bob said, in May, probably.
Okay. I will bear that in mind. I just need to go in and just have a little think.
Okay, thank you very much. The clerks will be in touch with you shortly. The next two applications from Dawn Butler, the first of which is on paper straws and potentially toxic chemicals. This is an application for a Westminster Hall 90-minute debate on a Thursday. Over to you, Dawn.
Thank you, Chair. So my debate, yes, is on paper straws, and everybody, I'm sure, will be familiar with having a paper straw and probably getting frustrated that it gets soggy before you finish your drink. So I investigated this actually and was shocked to find that paper straws included PFAs, which are also known as forever chemicals, and they can also contaminate your drink, and they can contaminate the water supply, and they have led to an increase in kidney and liver cancers. So paper straws, I think we need to have a debate to talk about the issues around paper straws, how they're used, the glue that's used, the paint that's used, and the forever chemicals that are used, and so that we can talk about the alternatives that are better for the environment, like bamboo, for instance.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from colleagues? Yes, go on.
Thank you, Dawn, for bringing forward this suggested debate. You are a little bit low on opposition members. You've got lots of Labour support, but only two from the opposition. And I would suggest somebody like Munira Wilson, who's the Liberal Democrat MP for Twickenham. She actually brought a 10-minute rule bill to the House, which was all about PFAs. So she'd probably be really interested in a debate such as yours. So reaching out to other opposition parties, I'm sure you can find more members who'd be keen to contribute.
Yeah, I put it out via email, but I'll happily. I'm sure once some members, when they saw it, thought we're advocating to bring back plastic straws, I think, and not kind of understanding the implications of the PFA. So, yeah, good suggestion. Thanks.
Anyone else? No? Okay, so the clerks will be in touch on this particular issue. Your second application is on mobile phone theft. Once again, a Westminster Hall debate request for a 90-minute debate, but this time on a Tuesday morning.
Yes. I mean, I'm happy for it to be in the main chamber too, because I think I think it's an important debate that everybody is familiar with. If their constituent hasn't had their phone stolen, you know, there's been a number of MPs who have had their phone stolen, and there've been 78,000 phones stolen, leading up to 2023 to March 2024, which is a 153% increase, and the biggest hotspot for mobile phone thefts is Westminster, where a mobile phone is stolen around every 4 minutes. And so I think we need to have this debate because we have to work together to combat this crisis. And we have to ensure that the manufacturing companies take their responsibility, because at the moment it feels like they factored this in as part of their business model, because they know that people then go out and buy another mobile phone. And so there's ways that they can stop a stolen phone, link into the cloud, that will mean that we can out-design the desire for people to steal mobile phones. So I think there's a really important debate that affects everybody.
Okay. Questions or comments? Any questions, Jess?
Yeah.
Same one, sorry to be a bore, just that you've got lots of government support and only 2 opposition members on your application, so I would encourage you to reach out to more opposition members, because I'm sure it's a conversation they'd all like to have. A colleague of mine had her phone stolen just last week.
Yeah, we've got a letter as well going to Secretary of State, so yeah.
Will, did you have a question? No. Okay.
Mr. President.
The other issue on this is the answering department for a Tuesday. Obviously, we can only allocate it when the answering department's the right one. I'm assuming this is the Home Office. Okay.
Yes, it will be.
Okay. At the moment, we don't know the allocations. This is likely to be a March.
Okay. Does that mean I should pitch for the main chamber then?
You can, but you'll be waiting a long time.
Okay, all right, cool. Can I ask about the International Women's Day debate?
You can, but we haven't yet. Yeah. So at the moment, we don't know what the government is going to offer us in terms of time during that week. In the event that we do get that the week, it will be offered on the 6th of March.
Perfect. Wonderful.
It'll be the first debate on.
Brilliant. Fantastic.
That's the proviso is the government allocate us that day. So anything you can do with the Leader of the House to encourage the Leader of the House to allocate the time to us will help.
I'll have a word, Chair. I'll have a word. Thank you.
Right, the clerks will be in touch with you. The next application is from Sharon Hodgson, and this is for a Westminster Hall debate on a Tuesday on the recommendations of the Hughes Report, options for redress for those harmed by valproate and pelvic mesh, 1 year on. Over to you, Sharon.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you to the committee for giving me this opportunity. Yes, the Patient Safety Commissioner, Henrietta Hughes, produced a report a year ago into options for redress for those harmed by valproate and pelvic mesh. I'm sure we've all had constituents who've been in touch about one or other or both of those 2 of the 3 things. If you add in Primados, you'll remember Baroness Cumberledge did the first do no harm report into mesh, Primados and valproate, but Henrietta Hughes just looked at the 2 because Primados was considered, it was under a legal what's the term that's used? Sub judice. So she couldn't look at that. But she did this report a year ago come Friday. So it would be really good if we could get a debate so we could push the government to respond to it, because it's been a year and I know we've had a change of government in that time, but the former government didn't get a chance to reply and this government hasn't yet. So it would be really good if we could sort of make that case to commemorate that anniversary, make the case, ask the government to look at this with fresh eyes and come forward, with their response. Now, with regard to the mesh, there are between 10,000 at least and up to 40,000 women who've been severely damaged by the mesh implantation, which we all know. Lots of those women have had that mesh removed. My mum being one of them. She's 80 now, but irrevocably damaged and will never be the same again. We don't know the exact numbers, and the women now are waiting up to 4 years for an appointment to seek to have the mesh removed. When it comes to valproate, again, there's about 20,000 children who were exposed to the harm in the womb from the medication, the epilepsy medication. It's an excellent medication if you have epilepsy, which is why so many people take it. But obviously, if you then fall pregnant whilst taking that drug, the child is harmed. So there's up to 20,000 children were exposed, and they have various levels of harm, physical and developmental, autism, etc. And we have known about this, sadly, with valproate since the 1980s, when it was suggested that these medicines were dangerous to babies. But it wasn't until 2016 and Lord O'Shaughnessy who actually then added the potential effects and warnings to the packaging. But sadly, babies are still being born now damaged by valproate. So we need, the debate wouldn't be to talk about why, it's to talk about how. Henrietta Hughes set out how a redress scheme, which is the main thing that we need to start looking at with regard to both of these harms, for compensation for the women and the families affected. So the why, Baroness Cumberledge did the why, Henrietta Hughes has done the how. So we need to look at how the government could set about doing a redress scheme for both of these harms, and there is huge amount of support across the House for this. I managed to get quite a few signatures. I probably should have got more. I think I got 4 from opposition parties. I'm sure if I'd put it on one of the WhatsApps for opposition MPs, I would have probably got dozens of names there. Quite happy to try and get more names, but I'm sure the debate would be really, really well attended.
Obviously, you're applying for a Tuesday Westminster Hall debate, so I'm assuming this is health and social care.
Yes.
Okay, so we don't have the schedule yet beyond the 4th of March. We filled up all the Tuesdays between now and then, so we can't tell you when the application would be heard. Given the range of speakers, especially if you do get a number of opposition speakers as well, they get 1 minute to speak in the 90-minute debate. So, but it's your application. Obviously, we'll consider it appropriately. Any questions, colleagues? Yeah,
yes.
Go on.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Sharon, for bringing this important application. Can I just double check that there's no legal proceedings against the drug manufacturers at the moment?
Not for valproate, no. And there may be some individual ones for mesh. I know where some women have managed to take sort of individual cases, but there's no class action for mesh or valproate. That was the issue with Primados, but they lost their case actually, the Primados case, sadly.
They were denied legal aid, weren't they?
Sorry?
They were denied legal aid.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions, colleagues? No? Okay, well, the clerks will be in touch, Sharon, about what's going to happen with the application. Right.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks, committee.
Thank you. Next application is Will Foster. Will, come and join us. Assessing retrospective accountability of the construction industry. A request for a chamber debate.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Obviously, I'm willing to take a steer if you think Westminster Hall is more appropriate. But I'm asking to improve a debate for us to improve accountability post-construction on the construction industry. And this follows an incident, more accurately 5 separate incidents in my constituency, where what should be a reputable developer, Srot McAlpine, have built a hotel that has had cladding fallen off it 4 times. The main road through my constituency is still closed to this day. It started falling off in 2021 when it was under construction. The industry seems unable and unwilling to solve this. And I'm aware that this is not just an issue in Woking. This happens in other constituencies as well. Obviously, there's been a lot of focus on building safety and fire safety post-Grenfell, quite rightly so, but there's either wider issues. We've had, over the last few months, the issue of fraudulent or questionable EWS forms have come to light. I know a lot of MPs cross-party have raised. There does seem to be an issue with the construction industry, the lack of dialogue, and I think a debate will shed light on this issue and make sure that MPs from cross-party basis can work together and hopefully push the government to implement more Grenfell issues, but also wider issues as well. And at that point, I'm happy to take questions.
Okay. Questions? Go on, Jess.
It would be remiss of me not to, even though there's lots of opposition, you've got a pretty poor showing from the government side. And I think if you're asking for a chamber debate, we'd expect to see kind of out of 15 names that at least half of them are from the government. So I would politely request that you go away and talk to some of our Labour colleagues and try and get a little bit more support, unless you are considering going in Westminster Hall, in which case the target is slightly smaller in getting a couple more government names.
So just as I said to the Chairman, I'm happy to go with Westminster Hall if the committee thinks it's more appropriate. These were the names that signed first. I believe since I've submitted these names, more MPs, including from the government benches, have signed up. Particularly quite a lot of members of the Housing, Communities and Local Government Committee that I'm a member of are very interested. They do feel it goes beyond the Select Committee, I think is the vibe. So I think it's a fair point, but these were the first names to sign up, as you know.
Well, if you could kindly supply those names to the clerks, it changes the ambit of the application.
It's, as I think we're probably all aware, you tend to reply a bit quicker to colleagues, but I think it's more of an even spread now.
Yeah, okay, fine. Any other questions, colleagues? No? Can I just ask, you've said it's a chamber application. If it's a Westminster Hall application, preference for a Tuesday or a Thursday?
I would have a preference for a Tuesday. Right. But a preference.
And the answering department would be HCLG? Or?
It would be MHCLG, yes.
Okay. Right.
And Alex Norris is the Minister in charge.
Okay, lovely. All right, well, the clerks will be in touch, and if you could kindly supply the additional names, that will help your application.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Right, we move on to Sir Ian Duncan-Smith. There you are, right. The third anniversary of the war in Ukraine. This is a half-day debate in the Chamber. West.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much indeed. Much of this is self-explanatory. It is, however, 2 points are relevant here. One is that the invasion took place on the 24th of February, 3 years ago. We're not going to be able to hit that date, but as close as possible to that date is what we're after. The intriguing thing about this, it took me 24 hours to get 49 names on this. So the cross-party sense of this is very big indeed. I and Tim Rocker and Leila Moran came back from Ukraine, not this weekend, but last weekend, the weekend before. And we got up pretty close to the front line in Kharkiv. We saw a lot of what's going on, met lots of the army, and also politicians went to Zelensky's office and spoke to the head of intelligence. And the message from them was stark, that they're losing and that they're not receiving the weapons and the munitions that they were promised, even smaller than they had hoped for. They're still not getting through. And their worry is that the West seems to have forgotten them. And I wrote about that over the weekend to try and gee people up. The UK has always been foremost, obviously, and they're thankful for that, in pushing. But with the new president and with some turmoil in Europe, they're concerned about what may happen. And so the debate, I hope, would be, if it's well attended, and I can't see any reason why it wouldn't be. I'm supported, obviously, by colleagues who also signed this. It's more than just a debate in the chamber to discuss amongst MPs. I would hope that we could persuade the media to cover the whole thing and to make the point that we cannot afford to lose Ukraine. If we lose Ukraine, my view is Taiwan is not far down the road to follow. We will have sent a message that we last sent to dictators back in the 1930s, as though we haven't learned a single lesson. And it's really vital. So this, I think, is and should be a very powerful debate about what being a member of the free world is all about.
Anything to add, your colleagues?
I've always thought that this war is our war. It's European war. And they win Ukraine and it comes on. We know what happens. We know what happens. I'm very concerned about the impact, what impact the election of the new president has, and his vice president now, what he said in a peace proposal that would come from them would talk about starting with what Russia keeps, and that Ukraine would have its own land, but it would remain neutral. It wouldn't be NATO, it wouldn't be UN. Well, we've seen what's happened with Hong Kong. This is our war, and we should accept it as our war. And I think we need to come out strong on this, very strong indeed. It is cross-party. The support is absolutely cross-party. Both the previous government and this government has been 100%. There's been no acrimony between us on it. And we have to do our best. These people are fighting our war.
And I think it's worth reflecting on the importance of having a debate to mark 3 years into what was supposed to be a 3-day war. And if nothing else, to mark the bravery of the Ukrainians who've held out for so long. I think it's sort of points out, I think we've had other debates in the Chamber, obviously, on this and other occasions to debate it, but we're in a completely different landscape than when we last had substantial debate on this. Partly that's, I think, due to the change in political order in the White House. But we're also approaching what most people kind of believe to be a period of negotiation, which will not only decide what happens in this conflict, but will have a significant impact on the global order. So I think it's worthy of substantial debate.
Can I just say one other point which occurs to me? While we were there, we discovered all sorts of stuff about what's going on behind the scenes that very rarely gets reported. For example, there are nearly 50,000 Ukrainian soldiers that need prosthetics right now. You cannot believe the scale of the tragedy that's going on. The PTSD is enormous, and we're trying to help them through a charity. This sort of stuff we can raise in this debate to remind everybody that below the nature of what, it's not a game. This is a very, very desperate situation that's taking place.
Given the nature of the debate that you want, are you wanting the government to actually do something on the back of this? And if so, what?
Well, we have deliberately not called for a substantive motion. We don't have a problem in policy terms with the government because, as we've known, the UK has almost uniquely had no issue between parties. We have been 100% behind each other on all of this, so I don't think it's for us to lecture them. But I think the purpose of the debate is to draw to the attention of the wider public, as well as some of our colleagues who may think this is all a bit of a distraction, that this is really the issue right now. And with that, hopefully, it will be picked up in the US and in Europe, because, the clock is ticking.
Obviously, the anniversary would be, I think, a Monday the 24th.
It is the 24th of February, yeah.
So at the moment, the government haven't allocated us time that week or the following week, so we don't know the position. Obviously, presumably you want it as close to the anniversary as possible.
Indeed, yeah, absolutely. Okay. I fully understand the restrictions, etc., but I hope the government might be minded to make a bit of time. If they don't, as I say, the earliest in March would be a fallback.
Any questions from Wallace?
Can I ask, Serian, if you have asked the Leader of the House if the government will make time for this debate?
I haven't officially, because I thought it was right that I came here first. Now that you've told me what you've just told me, I would be very happy to go and see the leader, I know very well, and just simply say, could you think about it? But I would hope the committee might want to.
I don't want to prejudge what the committee may have to say when we go into private session and consider the application. But obviously the earliest we could offer, because we've got recess, is that week, which will be the 27th of February. If we offered you that, would you be able to take it?
Sorry, which date? I didn't hear.
It would be Thursday the 27th of February.
We'll take
the earliest date, but we don't know if that time is going to be allocated to us.
Mr. Chairman, can I say to you, we'll take anything we can get, as long as possible and as soon as possible.
Right. Any other questions, comments? No? Well, thank you for attending, and obviously the clerks will be in touch.
Very good, thank you.
The next application is from Helena Dollymore on a general debate on women's health.
I declare an interest. I've signed it, or do I not need to do it?
Yes, you should, and yeah.
Or in that case, I did as well, Chris.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair.
Sorry, this is an application for, well, Chamber, Westminster Hall on a Tuesday or a Thursday, if you'd like to present your case.
Yes, we are asking for a general debate on women's health, given the importance of the issue to 51% of the population. We know that women's health disparities are a huge issue in this country. Of course, that matters to the 51% of the population that are women, but also it matters to many men who see their relatives suffer. And I'm pleased that we have a number of male MPs that have signed our application as well in that respect. We have a situation at the moment where we have huge disparities in health between women's health and men's health. We've recently had a report from the Women and Equality Select Committee on medical misogyny, the work was started under the last Parliament, and the committee have recently released that work that really exposes some of the malpractice that is happening and some of the case studies that have been experienced by women up and down this country. The waiting lists for gynecological surgery at the moment in this country are extremely long. If you put all of the women waiting on gynecological waiting lists in a line, they would go from London to Exeter. So it's affecting a lot of women. I know that there have been specific debates on specific aspects of women's health. We've seen various debates, endometriosis, obviously what Sharon Hodgson was just discussing in terms of her debate application, but I do think we would value from a general debate about women's health to look at all of these issues in the round, and also to hear from the new government what their overall holistic strategy towards women's health is. There have also been, a number of other recent developments in the maternity health scandal, and also the all-party group on birth trauma, which reported towards the end of the last Parliament, and that obviously relates to women's experience in childbirth. So there are a number of different issues. I know many MPs who have signed the application have got very specific constituent cases that they'd like to raise, and I think the House would value from having this matter discussed, ideally in the Chamber, given the number and the range of MPs who have put their names down.
I think you were here when we were talking earlier. Chamber time is very limited and there's a long queue. So there's more chance of a Westminster Hall debate at the moment than otherwise. The other thing I would just say is that there's a pending application for a debate on International Women's Day. So obviously you've mentioned that on your application form. So that application is already in, and we'll be trying to allocate that, given that we give a given time by the government. So I think contributors may make a contribution during that debate, but I'm sure you want to keep this as a separate item.
Yes, this in my mind, this is separate because this would be responded to by the Department of Health.
Yes.
And it's a health-focused issue, whereas International Women's Day will be a whole range of issues affecting women and gender equality.
What you were just going to say, Chair, you've put on there about International Women's Day, but I agree with what you just said. I think this is very much a separate debate, and talking about International Women's Day is very important, but this is a separate issue that should be debated in a separate place.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's a well-subscribed application, as has been said, and the clerks will be in touch with you shortly once we know timings available.
Yeah, you've mentioned that there's a very long waiting list for the Chamber. Does that mean it's impossible, or
nothing's impossible? It's just being very patient.
Yeah.
Because we are only allocated time when the government choose to give it to us.
Yeah.
And they don't tell us a long time in advance for that. So maybe at the moment we're waiting to hear about Chamber time after recess, but we have a queue of applications. If we've got every Thursday available, we've got enough applications pending that will fill up the time till the Easter recess. Mm-hmm. So we're then talking about May debates at the moment. So it could be May, it could be June. Westminster Hall is a lot easier because we know the dates on which we can allocate.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next application is from Sarah Dyke. Sarah here? Oh yeah, there you are. An application, once again, all three options chosen for ambulance service delays.
Thank you, Chair. I'm requesting this debate on ambulance service delays after the Darcy report stated that the NHS is in a critical condition. Since 2015, the NHS has missed every target and A&E times. Any waiting times have got substantially worse in recent years following a decade of funding settlements that failed to keep up with demand for services and staff shortages. We now have the sight of ambulance backed up outside of hospitals, certainly in my neck of the woods in Somerset, and I suspect that is something that all members see. Patients are left in corridors, there's hospital bed shortages and people left stranded in pain and waiting for hours for help, something that we see right across the country. But several weeks ago, Chair, the Southwest Western Ambulance Service NHS Foundation declared a critical incident due to the sustained pressure on services. And despite the hard work of all of the crews, the ambulance crews and staff, the service sadly is ranked bottom in England for Category 1 calls. And I know the Prime Minister has announced plans to cut waiting times in January of this year, pledging to tackle those hospital backlogs, but the plans seem to fail to adequately address how they will tackle this crisis. So I feel a debate is pertinent now, given the critical incident in Somerset, and my constituents are anxious about the state of ambulance services across my constituency, and also in Somerset. I have a huge caseload on it, and it's something that I feel that we should debate here. To give our constituents the confidence that we are dealing with the issue and raising their concerns in this place. We did have a recent debate on the backlogs in the NHS, and the debate saw a really high turnout of MPs from across the House, and so I believe that this debate on ambulance services would achieve the same.
Okay, thank you. Obviously, as we've said, chamber time is really challenging. Westminster Hall is a lot easier for us to allocate. And obviously, depends when we can make you an offer in terms of Westminster Hall. Would you accept a Westminster Hall debate if it's offered?
Yes, I would. My only concern is that because I think the turnout would be quite high on this, that obviously a chamber debate would allow more MPs to participate, given the previous debate that has taken place. But yes, to me, I think it's very important that we have the opportunity to debate this at this particular time, given the critical situation that we have in Somerset.
In terms of, you've heard earlier, it's likely to be May or June before we could get chamber time.
Which is why I would be happy with the Westminster Hall debate, because I'd rather us have the opportunity to...
I understand.
Yeah.
Any questions or comments? Jess, you've got...
If the honourable member is agreeing to a Westminster Hall debate, then I would say her application is balanced well enough. Sorry, I feel like I've become the opposition of government police.
Balance, yes.
But yes, it would be great if you could reach out when you are given the date of the debate to the government, especially, and to encourage more government members to come along to that debate. So it's a nice even split.
Chair, I was ready to answer that, in that I have had some more names that have come through on email to me over the last couple of days. So
clerks, that helps us considerably.
Sorry, Ed.
If you can pass those names to the clerks. Obviously, we've only got the application that you've submitted.
Of course.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Clerks, we'll be in touch with you.
Thank you, Chair.
Next application is from Jen Craft, sorry. Yeah, Jen Craft, I've misread. On British Sign Language Week. Jen.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the opportunity to make the case to the committee for this debate. I've asked for a debate in March, primarily because that celebrates Sign Language Week. British Sign Language, as some members will be aware, is an official language of the UK thanks to a private member's bill that passed, I believe, in 2022. And since then, I'm looking to establish an APPG on BSL, which we have had some success with. and we're working in conjunction with the British Deaf Association, who primarily represent British Sign Language first language speakers. And they're very, very keen to raise the profile of British Sign Language. They call it sort of preserving what they do have and promoting how far it could go. British Sign Language, unlike other sort of signed language systems, is a language in and of its own right. It's been a language for centuries. It's quite hard to trace the exact origins. It has its own culture that goes along with it, and British Sign Language first language speakers are very keen that that is recognised as a good in and of itself. And as it is an official language of this country in a way that Welsh and Gaelic and other languages are, I think it's probably a good time to start recognising and celebrating that in this place where we make the laws that apply to people in this country. Currently, you are not allowed to use BSL on the floor of the House without the Speaker's permission. And part of what I'm hoping to do with this debate is get permission to use BSL. I know that there are a number of members who speak BSL to a certain degree. Myself, I can do it very... I'm trying, sometimes very trying in using VSL, but I think part of the promotion is actually something that will be fairly groundbreaking and demonstrating that that is something that we are trying to embrace. A very key point that a BSL first language speaker said to me is that if they became a Member of Parliament, they wouldn't be able to use their first language in their day-to-day business, which is fairly shocking if you consider that is a first language for 87,000 people across the UK. And it's a chance, I think, to really showcase that it's worthy of attention, and I would encourage members to learn some BSL. The House authorities have recently added it to their language learning service for the first time. There are 2 BSL intro sessions that you can join before the week that we've asked for the debate to be held in, so everyone can take part. And what we would also ask permission, this is all very contingent on the Speaker's office giving permission for this, but we would ask permission to have a BSL interpreter on the floor of the House to signify. We have BSL interpreters who have sometimes come into the gallery, and if you watch Parliament on TV, there is a BSL version to all of our debates. I'm sure there'll be some people watching this right now in BSL, but I think it will really signify the importance of this as a language, not a communication system, a language, to actually have that happen. So that is my pitch. I've tried to keep it short and sweet.
Your application is for Westminster Hall for a Tuesday or a Thursday?
It is for Westminster Hall, yeah, for a Tuesday or a Thursday.
If it's a Tuesday, we can only allocate it when the answering department is the relevant one. Mm-hmm. Who do you consider would be answering this?
We've considered DWP. I mean, it's interesting because it kind of encompasses the whole of government agenda because it is a language. The only reason we've suggested DWP is because it's Stephen Timms and he holds the disability portfolio. But there is now a disability minister in every government department, so really it could be any department answering it.
Cabinet office or
could be Cabinet Office, it could be Home Office, we could,
I mean, I think we just need to be clear from your perspective which answering department. You've asked for a Tuesday or a Thursday. If it's a Tuesday, then the likelihood is that we don't know yet, but which answering departments will be available. But obviously there's the Tuesday the 18th.
Tuesday the 18th is when
would be during that week.
Yeah,
would be the possibility, but at the moment we don't know which answering departments are for that week. So
I think that there's a scope to be flexible. So the British Deaf Association, one of their big asks is around education and around ensuring that parents. So vast majority of deaf children are born to hearing parents. It's ensuring that British Sign Language tuition and lessons are available in a way that is relevant and local to all parents of a deaf child. It's basically about giving a choice to parents when they have a deaf child and that child about how they wish to communicate and enabling that, and in society in general. Okay. So we could be quite flexible with the answering department.
Any other questions from colleagues? And if you can do it in BSL, you get double marks.
Oh, Go on, Chris.
No scandal.
Scandal, there you go, he's learnt scandal.
I'm sorry I can't do it in BSL. I'd like to declare an interest in this, having signed it. I think it's interesting for the public because wasn't there a bit of an outcry when Boris Johnson was doing his announcements about COVID that they weren't signed, and I think people, we ought to recognise that the deaf signing community wants to hear from government in an accessible way. So, would you agree with that?
It's true. There's and it's not just the previous government. You know, we hear concerns around access to government consultations. It's important to note that BSL, being a language in its own right, doesn't follow the same grammatical rules that spoken English does. So a lot of BSL first language speakers really struggle with educational attainment. If you imagine the thing that I've written down here, you reading it backwards in your head. So there's a real need for BSL interpreters, and not just when there is a visual and an audio presentation, but also in written government communications as well.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, the clerks will be in touch with you when we've considered the application. I'm going to take the next application, Yang. I can't pronounce that. Yang. Okay. Good. We're going to take you because I know you need to get away. So
thank you so much.
We'll take you. And your application is for a debate in the Chamber on the financial sustainability and governance of English football.
Thank you, and I'm joined by Leader and MP as well.
Okay, welcome.
I recognise that there are some avid football followers already on the committee, but you don't need to be an avid follower of the sport to recognise the importance that football plays, both in grassroots communities all across our country, but also very much at the top of the Premier League and the soft power the cultural soft power that the UK has on a world stage because of its top clubs. However, I think it's fair to say that football clubs, particularly those in our communities and towns and cities across England, are in a dire financial state right now. It's estimated that roughly just over half of the top 92 clubs across the Premier League and the English Football League are technically insolvent. One of those clubs that we think is on the brink of insolvency is my local club in Reading, Lee's local club as well. And so you can see from the nature of the geography of this that this is a debate that naturally garners cross-party support, and there is an even split, I think, of our government and opposition MPs in signing this, just because of the fact that if you happen to be in the town and the neighbourhood where there is a club with ownership problems or with financial problems, then you're by your very nature as a community-based MP going to be drawn into that and into defending the club. Now, there's a systemic issue. I think I use Reading as the example of a club that's had particular difficulties in recent years from an absent owner, which has led to financial difficulties. But given that there have been about 7 clubs going into administration only in the last 5 years, you can see that this is really a debate with a really high kind of risk level to not just Reading but to clubs across the country. And I'm sure some of the reason why we had so much backbench support from different parties is because the MPs who signed this application often have had experience of their own club, whether that's in Salisbury, whether that's in Wigan, across the country, experiencing financial problems. So I think this is really a debate that gives backbenchers a chance to air those concerns and the variety of concerns that is felt in communities across the UK. And I think also would give a really important chance for those communities who are watching to feel like there is actually attention being paid to this in the House of Commons.
Thank you. Anything to
I mean, obviously football is our national game, so you would expect there to be a wide array of interest from the public as well as members across the chamber. And just really the importance of a football club. It's more than just the stadium or those 11 players on a pitch. They often have really strong community offers, but they underpin local employment opportunities as well. They often run academies, which are also then supported via homework clubs, etc. So they play a vital role, and we've seen in our community, so I represent the seat of Newbury, Reading being our nearest major club, and you've really noticed when the assets of the club have been stripped out, what that does to the local community in terms of fearing for the future of the club, which really is owned by the town. Whether someone owns a football club for 5 or 50 years, they will pass, and that club will still remain the ownership of its community. or hopefully it will do.
Okay, fine. Thank you very much. So, just two things from me. One, obviously, this is a request for a chamber debate. Given that we've got a football governance bill going through Parliament at the moment, don't know when that's scheduled to be heard by the Commons, but do you see any clash between the bill and the debate that you want to have?
First, I'd say the debate I'm proposing is much wider than the governance bill, particularly because what I propose we would debate in this backbench debate would be the financial sustainability of the football pyramid, including the distribution between the Premier League and the EFL, and even lower clubs outside of that division. And I think that underpins, I mean, financial problems are related to governance in many aspects when you have, let's say, unfit owners. But I think the flow of money, of media rights through the whole football pyramid, as I'm sure you're familiar with, Chair, is an underlying problem that goes beyond just.
I declare my interest as a platinum season ticket holder at Tottenham. So.
Yeah, I'd also add to that there's a particular time window issue here, which is, I mean, for Reading fans and for fans of other clubs which are in imminent financial difficulties, we've just finished the end of the transfer window for this season, and from now until the end of the actual football season in the spring, lots of clubs will find that their quick sources of revenue have dried up, and so there is really an imminent financial pressure, and I think that's why it's particularly important, I think, that we bring the debate at this time. As to your question, Chair, about the timing of the governance bill, my understanding is that is with the Lords and possibly likely to be in the Lords for quite a long amount of time. I think possibly Martin Vickers MP might have
quite a lot of amendments been put down.
Exactly, yeah. I personally wouldn't think that the Lords debating an issue or part of an issue would preclude the Commons from having a view on the issue, but I also am just concerned about the time frame that's left to us, particularly from now until the end of the season.
There's a risk that this goes in the queue and it will be heard, the debate will be after the end of the season. Sure. There's a risk. So, I
mean, well, firstly, I would hope that the numbers of and the spread of government opposition support would speak for itself in terms of
that's
urgency.
Perfectly fine.
But separately to that, if of course, I think we much prefer a debate in Westminster Hall or in the Chamber before the end of the season, rather than waiting beyond the end of the season for a Chamber debate.
So at the moment, the application is just for the Chamber.
Yeah.
So you're amending it to include Westminster Hall.
Yeah, I'm happy.
Okay, fine. Thank you, Martin.
Well, mainly to declare my interest, Chairman, since I've signed the application, and as a Grimsby Town season ticket holder, I'll give them a mention, which I have to say is under sound ownership at the moment, but I do recognise what Johan says.
On the record,
yeah. I do recognise what Johan says about the challenges that face many clubs, particularly if they have rogue owners, as I know there are concerns throughout up and down the league about one or two ownerships. So I certainly would go along with the supporting it. It's got a wide range of members supporting.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, did you want to come?
Yeah, just really quick. I mean, I'm a Spurs supporting Ipswich MP, so on both fronts, I'm not having a particularly good time this season. But I sort of agree with the fact that what Wan says about possibly having Westminster Hall debate in sort of March time, ahead of when the bill may come back. That might kind of instruct any kind of future debate as well when the bill does return to the Commons, I presume. So I think that timing wise might work quite well in terms of this wider debate.
Okay, yeah, that's fine.
We haven't talked about what team I support, but all I would say is the team that had financial difficulties about 20 years ago has not really recovered from that, and they were in the 60s and 70s the greatest team in the world. But what I would say is I think it's a really good point that Lee made about it's not just about the governance, it's about the impact on the community, and I think that the team that I do support, as well as Harlow Town, did a lot of that work, and the things that get cut are the youth team, the women's team, and the community outreach. So I think I would just sort of urge you to widen that part of the debate out, and also because Alistair's sitting here, should we just be talking about English teams? Should we also be talking about Scottish teams? You're welcome.
Very much take your point about particularly the impact on women's football, which was unfortunately the part of Reading Football Club which was the first to suffer from the current ownership problems. And the reason why it's so important in our communities, as Lee says, is because there are ambassadors from these clubs who go and promote youth football, women's football, and across our communities.
And the football governance bill going through the Lords doesn't address women's football. That's for the regulator to look at further down the line, and doesn't go right down to community football either. It stays within the National League structure.
Okay, any other questions? No? Well, the clerks will be in touch with you shortly, and we'll try and obviously allocate it as soon as we can.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Final application is from Alistair Carmichael on a debate on
future of farming.
The future of farming for a chamber debate for 3 hours.
I don't know, maybe given the last reference there, if I should start with a declaration of total disinterest when it comes to football. Something of a heresy.
The English football.
I'm given to understand, but to matters more germane to my application. Future of farming, Chair, it might help if I explain a little bit of the thinking of what has brought this here. The Environment, Food and Rural Affairs Committee that I chair is trying to do things just a little bit differently in this Parliament. You'll be familiar with the sort of standard select committee approach. You see something interesting and important, you think, well, we'll do an investigation and report. You put a call for evidence. 5 weeks later, you start a few weeks of evidential hearings, you do a visit, you get together, you write your report, and 6 months after everybody else has stopped talking about it, you publish something which then sits in a filing cabinet. So we are undertaking 9 broad inquiries, which it is our intention will be the work for this Parliament. And having instituted the inquiries, this allows us to be a bit more fleet of foot. So when things happen, like before Christmas, we had the water price review just on the 19th of December. So 2 weeks after we came back, we were able to take evidence from the consumer groups and Southern Water in relation to that. This is by way of another small experiment in innovation, because we all know how the House loves to do things differently. And what we're looking for here is an exercise in reaching out to people beyond the committee, so that there is an opportunity for members to contribute in essentially highlighting the areas that they think would be of interest and importance to them, and that, in its, as far as it's possible, can inform the work of the committee going forward. I have to say, in the years that I've been doing Backbench Business applications, I've never found an easier one than this. We went out with an email and a reminder email, and we have, including Sarah Bull, who just emailed me before I came here, 68 members: Labour, Conservative, Liberal, Democrat, Reform, SNP, DUP, UUP, Alliance and Plaid. The only figure that I'm slightly light on here is Labour at 11, but I'm not quite sure what's going on here. I did meet one MP in Edinburgh Airport who took me aside and said, I can't sign your application, but if you get your debate, I will speak in it, which is an interesting exercise in mental gymnastics. Look, there's an awful lot to talk about in farming at the moment. We're at a pivotal moment where we have to decide what we mean when we talk about food security. Does this mean a reliance on imported food, which seems somewhat foolhardy given the events of recent years, or does it then mean that we're going to have to treat domestic production differently than we have done for the last couple of decades? There's then the whole nature depletion agenda, the flooding mitigation, the climate change mitigation. We're expecting farmers to do an awful lot. And without ever actually giving them much indication of how we expect them to do it or what we expect them to achieve by way of targets at the end of it. And then, of course, there are the various controversies that we've had in relation to the budget announcements, inheritance tax, double camp pickup and the rest of it. I'm hoping, and I put it no more strongly than this, I'm hoping that this might, framing the debate in this way, will allow us to speak about other things beyond the budget changes, because important though they are, there has to be a bigger debate to be had around agriculture. I've heard what you said to others about dates and times. Given the response I've had to this, I'm really keen that we find time in the Chamber for this, but also given that we have, or the thinking behind this, if it's possible, that we play it into the work of the committee and their ongoing investigation. This is not as time sensitive as other applications might be. So while my instinct is to want everything now or yesterday at the latest, I would be prepared to play a longer game with this one if that were suitable for yourselves.
Questions? Very well subscribed application, and thank you for presenting it. It's just a case, as we've said, of when we will be able to find time and when the government actually allocates us time in the Chamber that we can put a debate on. One thing I would say, of course, is that if you really get 68 speakers, probably a 2.5 hour debate, the way things go on Thursdays, they're going to get maybe 2 minutes each at best.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
I anticipate there may be some attrition.
I'm sure there will be, particularly on a Thursday. Anyway, thank you. The clerks will be in touch. That concludes the public business of the committee. The committee will now go into private session to determine the timing and allocation approval. Order.